Hello, team, and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan Elmeds Pierce. This is a Ukraine War News Update, part one of two, hopefully, for the 6th of August 2023. I have a plan for being able to get a spare charger for this, so I am supremely confident, thanks to the generosity of others, by the way, for helping me in that regard. But yeah, I think I have a way around it, which is amazing. But so I'm going to try for two videos just now. I am just on holiday in Crete, and so it's just really difficult to obviously try and arrange getting these videos done. So apologies if it doesn't fit with your time frame and whatnot. We'll go to where we normally start: the Ukrainian general staff losses for the Russian forces for the day before. All the usual caveats apply, of course. 590 liquidated personnel. That's a KIA for the Russians there. 5 tanks, 11 APVs, armor personnel vehicles, and whatnot. I think that is pretty, I guess, fairly average for the last few weeks. Maybe an uptick a little bit in APVs. 22 artillery systems and one multiple launch rocket system. That is, again, another bad day for the Russians, as I say repetitively. But that's good news for the Ukrainians. If that is a bad day for the Russians with regard to artillery systems, and I'm saying that every day, then there has to be some point, some tipping point where a critical mass of destroyed Russian artillery systems is reached. 10 drones. That will be not last night, the night before. We'll come on to drones and cruise missiles because there's 12 cruise missiles there. There were a lot of drones and cruise missiles last night, and that's not represented by these figures because they top these up quite often before the nightly or the point where Russians usually attack at night with cruise missiles and drones. So they often refer to the night before. 19 vehicles and fuel tanks. Again, pretty heavy day for the Russians, and 4 pieces of special equipment such as ISR, that's intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, electronic warfare, so on and so forth. It could be any number of things. So that's quite wide. There's a wide remit for that category. So again, it's going to be a bit of a problem for the Russians going forward, given the amount of artillery that is being lost on a daily basis. Here we have Andrew Perpetua doing his kind of Oryx thing, where he's totting up all the pieces of equipment. He's now doing it in a much more organized fashion with all the videos and images that he surveys in a day. You can see here that the Ukrainians have lost far fewer bits of kit, no tanks there at all. The Russians have lost in that 4 tanks and a lot of civilian vehicles, which is interesting. It goes to show that the Russians are now relying on their logistics or for their logistics on commercial or civilian vehicles. That tells its own story, I guess. Also, look at the top there: radar, surveillance, comms, recovery vehicle. Those kind of bits of kit are useful to be taken out by the Ukrainians. That goes to this figure at the bottom of the general staff figures, the special equipment. I presume those 3 fit into that category. So the numbers there tell us that the attrition rates are still very much in favor of the Ukrainians. Sometimes it's closer to parity. Rarely we see a day where the Russians lose fewer bits of kit than the Ukrainians. This seems to be where it's at the moment, which is the Russians losing a good deal more than Ukrainians. But again, all the caveats apply. So we have Russia's guided air bomb against a blood transfusion center in Ukraine this evening. Kupiansk community in Kharkiv region, dead and wounded are reported. My condolences. Our rescuers are extinguishing the fire. This is reported by Zelensky. This war crime alone says everything about Russian aggression. Beasts that destroy everything, that simply allows to live. Defeating terrorists is a matter of honor for everyone who values life. I'm not quite sure about the translation there, but you get the point. So Zelensky's pretty angry with that. And actually, if you go down to Kherson, Andrew Perpetua is talking about this in his live stream, saying that they double tapped a cathedral in Kherson, where they hit the cathedral, waited for the emergency services to get there, and hit the cathedral again. They hit a library and they hit a hospital as well, where they killed a doctor. And you're thinking, are these military targets? A library, a cathedral, and a hospital? I mean, just in kind of 24 hours of hitting Kherson, they've committed a number of war crimes. It's just that there seems to be no end to the flagrant abuse of humanitarian law there. In temporarily occupied Donetsk, however, on the other side, the building of the Donetsk University of Economics and Trade broke out. Videos are from local social networks. So the question here is, was this a genuine target? I don't want to give necessarily the idea of parity in terms of hitting invalid targets. I don't know what the story is behind this one, but yeah, that the Russians were decrying Ukrainians for doing that. Now, Eskadrone has dropped. So this is a company that makes a bunch of or a bunch of drones actually for the Ukrainians. They have dropped a sizable haul of FPV loitering munition videos from their Da Vinci series with an equally sizable amount of destruction. And you can just go and look through all of these. That's just from the last few days from Eskadrone. And yeah, a lot of kit being taken out. FPV drones are becoming a real kind of center point of Ukrainian offensive work. They are an incredibly potent, considering they're just small things with RPG warheads stuck on them, but they are incredibly potent nonetheless, and a real thorn in the side of the Russian forces there. Going to just talk about what happened with the striking of these boats previously. So, what happens to be fresh satellite footage of the Novorossiysk port with Olengorsky Gornyak. Notable is that that's the large landing craft that was hit. Notable is a finesse with which the two ships, so that's that and Sig, is um, that tanker that was hit as well, were taken out. Russian propaganda tried to draw attention to the environmental effects of the attack, yet Ukrainians have taken great care to put the ships out of service for a while rather than sinking them, thus preventing an ecological emergency. They could have easily launched follow-up drones. No one was shooting back at them. Sorry, I'm not sure who's the source of the photos, he says. But anyway, that is an interesting point, and it could be that this was an intentional crippling of the ships rather than taking them out, thus causing an environmental disaster, basically in their own waters. Right, going on to strikes here overnight, and I said that this would happen yesterday. I said, watch out for missiles or something along the lines. Watch out for a big missile strike because they're going to get revenge for hitting the SIG and hitting the large landing ship. And lo and behold, last night, a massive, or in fact, two waves, I believe, of cruise missiles struck Ukraine or attempted to strike Ukraine. Overnight, Russia attacked Ukraine with a very big amount of cruise missiles and Shahed drones, says now reports. In the first wave, 14 caliber cruise missiles were launched, which 12 were shot down. Also, 3 Kinzhal missiles were launched. It's not disclosed whether these are shot down. In the second wave, Russia launched 27 Shahed drones, which all of them were shot down. Furthermore, 5 out of 6 caliber cruise missiles and 13 out of 20 KH-101 KH-555 were shot down. So this equates to, as far as I can work out, or at least a Ukraine battle map here, Ukrainian air defenses shot down 30 of the 43 missiles sent. So they reckon 0 of 3 Kinzhals were taken out. These are the hypersonic missiles that only really the Patriot systems, perhaps the SAMP-T can take them out as well. But those are positioned only around Kyiv, possibly somewhere else like Zaporizhia. Not really sure. I'm sure there's Patriots somewhere else. But if they are not firing at those in the range of those systems, then there's very low probability that the Kinzhals will be shot down. Question is where they're shooting them. Well, we'll come to that in a second. So 0 out of 3 of those, 17 out of 20 caliber cruise missiles, 13 out of 20 X-101 KH-555 missiles, and all 27 drones, Shahed drones, were taken out. So that was unsurprising. The question is what they got left in the tank as far as missiles is concerned, or are concerned. Now, now's the time if you're NATO. If you're NATO and you were wanting to attack Russia, now's the time. I'm not obviously suggesting that's a good or proper thing to do. However, they would not be in a good position to defend themselves. They're exhausting their stockpiles of pretty much everything outside of the kind of Navy, really. But in terms of missiles that the Navy use, they're using them up at a pretty staggering rate. About 10 explosions ran out at Starokonstantiniv in the Khmelnytsky region during the air alert. So this is really important. It appears that the Russians were trying to hit the airport again, where the Ukrainians send up their Su-24s to shoot the Storm Shadow cruise missiles. Thomas Tyner says Russia is now firing something like 90% of its cruise missiles and ballistic missiles at Starokonstantiniv Air Base, from where Ukraine's Su-24M or MR fly Storm Shadow missions. I believe they'd pulled their airframes out of there ahead of the attack. This shows how much long-range missiles panic the Russians and how important ATACMS are for Ukraine's victory. The Pentagon says it can't spare any, but Lockheed Martin produces hundreds a year, and if the US is too chicken to help Ukraine, then at least allow Poland, Romania, Greece, and Turkey to transfer some of their ATACMS to Ukraine. This is, again, the old ATACMS conversation. I was reading somewhere that actually they fly above the range of the S-300 and S-400, so they could be pretty useful, the ATACMS. This airfield, this is coming from, I think it's Yuri Ikhnet, yes, in charge of the spokesperson for the Ukrainian Air Force. He says the airfield is not given a rest by the invaders. As the Speaker of the Air Force stated, the main blow fell in the Khmelnytsky region with Kinzhal missiles, but they were knocked down. So he says the Kinzhal missiles are knocked down. I'm not too sure. Nonetheless, just to give you an idea of where this is, so you've got Kyiv there, and you've got Khmelnytsky just to the, well, not just, it's quite a long way to the southwest. That's Khmelnytsky, the city, and then you've got the region in which the air base is situated, and that's where the Russians were aiming for. And I don't know whether they hit with anything and what damage was done. I'm sure the Ukrainians are just going to be onto this. So as soon as those missiles are detected, then they'll be sending up those planes into the air so they don't get hit, I would guess. Details of the numerous attacks on Khmelnytsky region. The airfield was hit again, though Ukraine says most missiles were shot down. A bus station, cultural commercial buildings were hit, and a fire broke out at a corn waste warehouse. One employee was injured. So the Ukrainians, not as we know, this is their want, and the Ukrainians are not spreading information about successful Russian hits. There could well be successful hits. I'd imagine there probably were. But whether they cause fundamental problems for the Ukrainian airframes that fire the Storm Shadows, I doubt it. Kharkiv was hit possibly twice by S-300 missiles. So not only all those cruise missiles were fired, but there are also S-300s that aren't included in those lists of missiles. Fired from Belgorod, just over the border. Because of the proximity, there's little time to react. Sound of the blast was recorded, so you can hear that. But basically, Kharkiv gets consistently hammered by S-300s. Russian air defenses themselves are reported to be active over the city of Chornomorsk in northwestern occupied Crimea, with multiple explosions having been heard by residents. This was yesterday, and there were several reports of places being hit in Crimea by the Ukrainians. Zelensky says Russia attacked the Motorsikh facility in Zaporizhia. Russia used Kinzhal and Caliber missiles in its evening missile strike against Ukraine, attacking the aircraft engine manufacturer Motorsikh's factory in the city of Zaporizhia, as well as the Khmelnytsky Oblast, President Zelensky said. So that's to say it's not just Khmelnytsky and the airbase, that they were also, possibly with the Kinzhals, attacking Zaporizhia. And if they're attacking Zaporizhia with the Kinzhals, maybe that means Patriot system isn't in the Zaporizhia area, as I previously said. 4 powerful explosions ran out in the Kursk region at 4 in the morning, so that's over the border in Russia. Ukraine is hitting Russia where it can. And now we move on to other bits and pieces before we end this first video. This is getting quite a lot of bandwidth at the moment. It's just well, it's a very important move for the Ukrainians, where they're replacing on the Mother of Ukraine monument the Soviet symbol with the Ukrainian trizub or trident, and that's finally been completed a few days ago. The communist insignia was removed, or were removed, multiple from the statue, which is over 100 meters high. So there you have the trident on there. You get to see the trident there. In fact, I've got some more images. Here is the old Soviet insignia, and now we have the renewed statue and how it looks. So this is, I guess, important for Ukraine to, as they decommunize their country, and they've been getting rid of statues. This has been much more difficult. It's not just a case of knocking down a statue. This is adapting an already created pretty sizable monument and changing some of the insignia thereon. But anyway, that seems to have been a pretty successful um, project there, and good stuff. And that's quite an impressive monument, to be fair. Right, coming on to the last thing. This is a bit. Goodness me, I could talk to you about Russian propagandists until the cows come home, but I won't. And speaking of cows, someone on my threads yesterday were like, "I love listening to you while I'm milking my cows." Like, oh man, it takes all sorts. That's awesome. It's brilliant. I love the range of different scenarios to which videos like this can be listened. Uh, Brilliant. Anyway, this is Vlada Knowlton, who often comments on what Julia Davis does in her translation of through Russian Media Monitor of Russian propagandists. She says of Markov, who said, so a Russian propagandist here saying, quote, American and British political technologists are making an an artificial army in Ukraine that's united by a homosexual brotherhood like the Spartans. Seriously? Is that seriously what you're on TV spouting? I mean, is this your theory? Uh, just ridiculous. Anyway, yeah, well done, guys. So thank you for that. Please like, subscribe, and share. I will get this one out, and then in just a short while afterwards, I'll get the second one to this, and then I've got high hopes of being able to get hold of a lead, and that would be awesome. Because I can continue to do at least my news updates. It's going to be more difficult to do my mapping updates, I think, because I have to usually spend I usually spend quite a long time going through my maps uh, to make sure I know what I'm talking about, and then manipulating my maps. It's just a much harder one to do sitting on a bed in a hotel room, quite frankly. So I'm going to have to think about that, but I might try and just incorporate it more into the second part of the news piece. Nonetheless, thanks so much for your support, and thank you for continuing to support while I am um, attempting to relax, but not always succeeding out here. But that is the way my brain works. Funnily enough, last night, I mean, you come to Crete, you're in the middle of kind of nowhere or whatever at this hotel, and then you meet your two mates who are now married, who I went to uni with in Leeds. And it was there last night in a hotel, and we had wonderful drinks, regaling our times at Leeds University. We played Ultimate together, and yeah, it's great to see them and their kids. Just what are the chances? All the way in Crete, and then you meet mates that you haven't seen for ages. Brilliant. Anyway, that's completely irrelevant. Take care, everybody. Speak to you soon.